And you are live.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Public Services Committee meeting on June 15th of 2021. Jenny, will you call roll, please?
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Here.
Ms. Fox,
Here.
Mr. Reiner.
Here.
All right. Let's get to our agenda. Well, this evening we've got looks like four items on the agenda. And the first one, JM, you are going to be talking about the mobility phase 4 wrap up and phase 5. And just to let the rest of the committee know, JM needs to be finished and go to another meeting at 6 p.m. So if we have questions, we want to try to get them in before that time. All right, JM, it's all yours.
Good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Councilmember Fox, for that reminder. I will go through this as fast as I can, but also give enough time for you all to provide feedback. Today, we're going to talk about the next steps for phase 5. I will always, with each of these meetings, I always try to provide a background on the mobility study. So I'll go through that very quickly, but just to touch on that, the three things I want us to talk about today are the next addendum of the public service agreement with a professional service agreement with SHARE. We want to look at extending it to the end of the year, so we'll talk more about that. We also want to talk about two different initiatives. One is a career management program study, and the other one is Mobility Hub pilot. And then we'll have 3 questions at the end for you all to provide feedback and start the conversation. As a reminder, the Dublin Mobility Study is our plan to look at innovative transportation solutions for our community and their evolving needs. That can take the place of serving those who are aging in place, those with disabilities, and the workforce, as well as looking at other ways that we can expand the service for the greater population. Our key objectives, I shouldn't say first and foremost, but one of our objectives is to support economic development and economic growth. We also want to expand mobility options in an equitable manner to provide many different options for that match up to destinations or what have you, or the needs in our community. We want to have people active, engage in active transportation, because we believe that will lead to better health outcomes. And where there's opportunities to redevelop the city, we want to look at ways to have more walkability, more public, or I should say more transit-friendly developments, and other ways that we can push the envelope in terms of mobility and connecting our community together. This began in 2017, and since then we've gone through multiple phases to where we are today, which is talking about phase 5 in 2021. This phase will look at refining what we've done in the past and previous phases, as well as look at furthering the implementation of shared micromobility options, mobility hubs, and bike loops, as well as other wayfinding. So today we're going to talk mostly about 3 areas. Microtransit is going to be brought up with SHARE. We're going to talk about shared micromobility options with the curb management study, and then think about mobility hubs with the Mobility Hub pilot. And this is, again, a snapshot of the ecosystem that we're building out in Dublin. So we'll start with Addendum 7 of the SHARE contract. And so far in 2021, we've seen ridership increase by 26%, or almost 26%, I should say. At the same time, we've been tracking the costs in terms of the invoices that we're getting for the service, and we noticed a reduction of 36% in operating costs. That's primarily due to the fact that we're using a city vehicle in place of a SHARE vehicle, and that leads to a different billable hour for that service. So that's been great to see those numbers shift in that direction. We're looking at Addendum 7. We want to continue another 6 months to the end of the year. We are looking to submit an RFP for 2022 and beyond in terms of microtransit service. So this addendum will get us to the rest of the year so we can begin planning for next year. We are looking to double the budget. Previously, we've done $100,000 6-month extensions, and that was due to the pandemic and uncertainty, and want to make sure we're being conservative with our money. So now that we see things are opening up and restrictions are lifting, we feel like there's going to be a demand that we want to make sure that we can accommodate. So we want to expand the hours of service as well as the scope of service. We want to include non-emergency medical transportation appointments. That's what the acronym NEMT stands for, as well as more opportunities to connect our residents to events in the community and special events for that matter. So I think with the reduction that we've seen in operating costs as well as more ridership, we want to continue to foster the momentum that we're beginning to see post-pandemic. Next, I'm going to talk about, and at the end of this, there'll be 3 questions, so we can go back if need be. But the next thing I want to talk about is the curbside management program study. This began from conversations previously about on-street parking with this committee, as well as conversations around bike share and scooters, and kind of making sure that the curbside is organized, or we can look at the different friction between the competing uses and see what makes the most sense in terms of policies, or if there are technological solutions that we can deploy to help manage the curbside in that public asset. So we'll be looking to do this, complete this by the end of 2023. We would like to issue an RFP, and we want to focus on historic Dublin as well as the redeveloped areas of Bridge Street District. So you'll see on the slide, there's an image with the blue outline. That's basically the focus area that we'll be looking at in terms of curbside management. Finally, we want to look at a mobility hub as part of implementing this, this priority area. We've been working with Nelson Igard on conceptual designs. So think about 10% of the total design. We want to begin looking at what are the components of the mobility ecosystem, and then what are some things that we could begin to plan for, if it's a docked bike share, or if it's other amenities that help with the mobility study in the mobility program. This will lead to an implementation guide that will help with the rest of the mobility hubs that we want to implement in the future. I also think this can set the grounds for a mobility placemaking plan. So I know Councilmember Fox mentioned this in the last meeting, thinking about placemaking components as we look at this infrastructure. And I think that will help inform us where we see opportunities to incorporate placemaking components as we look to the public for input at designing these mobility hubs. We mentioned the first 3 that we wanted to start with last meeting, so I want to reiterate that. We're looking at the Dublin Community Recreation Center. We're looking at the Columbus Metropolitan Library Dublin branch with the parking garage next to it, as well as North Market Bridge Park. And as a reminder, this is a complete list from last meeting. So we did move some priorities. So if you'll see phase 2, Franz Road and Metro Place North is a priority for the next phase. That came from discussions from last meeting, talking about how important that is to support DCAP and other initiatives. And then looking at the park and ride and other buildings. But we'd like to get your feedback to make sure this is the right path to go forward. So I'll jump to the discussion feedback questions. The first one deals with the share addendum. So we're curious to know from the committee, what are the next opportunities for service expansions beyond non-emergency medical appointments and beyond some of the community events that we mentioned? The second question is the Public Service Committee supportive of the curbside management program study? And what would you say is the most pressing challenge to be considered as we go down this path? And the third one with the mobility hub is, as we look at the next phase of expansion for mobility hubs, should staff focus on civic destinations and municipal buildings, or should we look at other points of interest to prioritize, such as recreational and entertainment focused destinations? So I'll take a pause now and I'll hand it over to the committee for feedback and discussion.
Well, that's a lot to talk about, but it's great. I think we've got a lot of important questions to answer here. So before we answer these 3, does the committee have any questions for JM concerning the presentation?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. So your thoughts on the next opportunities for service expansion, other than the 2 that he mentioned? Kathy?
JM, forgive me, I have a tickle in my throat here. I apologize. Do we have data on that? I didn't necessarily see the data in the packet about what uses are most popular. And I know we're just coming out of the COVID situation, so I'm not really sure. I see Ryan shaking his head. So for me to talk about sort of next opportunities, I'd like to sort of get an update of what's popular and what's still a little bit challenged. I will say I see the circulator out a lot when I'm out and about, and so that's wonderful. So I know it's out there, but maybe a quick update on that for me would be helpful.
Absolutely. Ryan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up my destination table. The way I can kind of speak to it specifically. I think for the seniors, the destinations are still shopping, dining, not a lot of entertainment. Library is a popular destination. They're also using it to go to senior living communities. And so you have individuals that are living at home that are going to senior communities for a visit. Those are very common. On the workforce side, it is your retail type jobs that have the most participation. Myers stores, Whole Foods, Kroger's. We also are seeing a lot of hospitality workers going to hotels. We've had a 33% increase in ridership of the workforce in just the last 30 days. And I would attribute that to the return to work plans, hiring, as you guys were talking about as we started the meeting, and the return of CODIS service back to normal volumes. And all of that are contributing to the ridership activity. The feedback that has driven the request for medical rides is from the riders. It's the most common request that we get that we are not able to say yes to. And they've always been understanding as to why. But despite there potentially being other options or cabs or funding through their insurance provider, they want a ride they can trust. And if they use this to go to the grocery store, they'd love to be able to use it for the doctor. So I would say being able to expand this for medical visits will definitely increase participation amongst the seniors.
Ryan, I got a question on that point, if I could ask you. For medical visits, is it our local Dublin Methodist Hospital, or do they want to go over to one over here on Sawmill Road, or do they want to go sort of away from Dublin? Do they expect that, or is it pretty much in medical issues confined to just the Dublin area?
It's all going to be within Dublin, so there won't be any there wouldn't be any medical transport outside of Dublin.
Okay.
It's not always to a hospital. It could be just regular checkup visits with their primary care physician.
Okay. With a Dublin office address.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So Ryan, that is the number one request. What would be a number two request or a number three request?
The one that sticks in my mind is places of worship, just because I know we have to say no to it. Other than that, we have a lot of really popular destinations, and so I've seen more things going to Bridge Park and stuff like that. That's kind of a new thing. But I believe our ridership now is higher than it's ever been, even pre-pandemic.
Ryan, back to the comment you just made about religious destinations. I could see where they'd want to go to church. We are not allowed to do that.
Yep.
Because we're a city or something, or?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but I think it was because of the potential for not being able to accommodate all religions and anybody that it was said, let's not do that. It's a gray area. It's also not something common in a lot of transportation programs. So
It's interesting. I mean, I could see where this would be as important to them because, they have a limited week as far as work and stuff, and going to church or synagogue or would be a really important thing for them. If you've been on the island of Antigua, I think it was Antigua, it was mandatory that the public bus pick you up, and it was mandatory that you go to church on Sunday. If you want to look at an extreme case of this, they actually made you go to church on Sunday because they said their crime level was so low because they picked up all their citizens. I don't know if that's still applicable, but it was sort of one of these weird geopolitical things that you think about. And they were saying, yeah, the buses pick you up and everybody goes to church and we don't have much crime because of it. But jumping out of that, which is just the sidebar of interest, I would think that that's something for seniors that they'd really like to do.
well, I'm glad you mentioned that, John. As I think about this more, I know that as when we get the request, a lot of times it's not because they're going to a service. It's because their activities are at the church. There's
Oh.
meals at the church. And so by excluding it as a destination altogether, there are other reasons why somebody would go there that we aren't able to serve. So just something to consider.
Perhaps we should explore the legalities of that and just get a little more background before
Yeah.
we move ahead on that one. But so if the medical one, and I recall the conversation that we'd had earlier about the funding channel, and I don't know if there's a separate funding stream that can come from the insurance. I'm as I'm saying that, I can imagine the administration related theretofore, and we may not want to go there, but when you look for the question about opportunities for service expansion, it only seems practical to me that we would go where the riders want to go.
Right. Well, Kathy, it's always been my goal to be able to stack funding. And so if we are able to start doing medical rides, we can take on the research and the process of finding out how can we be eligible to do the Medicaid and Medicare type of rides. I have to look into the charter limitations that transit agencies have to make sure that we could qualify. But it would be great if you were able to go grab that Medicaid funding to subsidize that one ride as part of the greater program.
That'd be a great thing, Ryan, if you could pull that off, that'd be wonderful. I mean, and then I could see where there could be funding for that. And, when you're a senior citizen, besides the food, it's going to be medicine, and it's probably going to be going to a faith community. I mean, it was going to be the three big things you do. So if we're oriented towards those directions, I think that's probably where we might want to be.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 10 more minutes before JM has to leave. One question I have for you, Ryan, is what about children? What about kids who want to go to the zoo in the summertime or need a ride to the pool and parents work? Is that a request?
So we don't get it now, I think primarily because it's not marketed. The only children we do serve are those with disabilities. We do have quite a decent number of those. Not in Dublin, but I did recently get the request from a senior or multiple that wanted to be able to pick up their grandchild to go to an activity together. I thought that was a really interesting use case where a senior might want to bring a guest. We do transportation for as young as 3. There's no operational reason why we couldn't do this. The state of Ohio has pupil transportation laws that restrict the size of the vehicle that you're using, but this isn't a school use case. So especially for summer activities, that could be something that could be added. And as you think about groups of people who are always passengers, we're serving seniors, individuals with disabilities, and the entry-level workforce, and the students are the next step.
The reason I say that is because as a grandmother, I'm watching a bunch of my grandkids being stuck at home all day long because they don't have transportation and parents are at work. And if we don't have an older child that can drive, especially these middle schoolers, they are, so that's to me a good opportunity and I think a very important one. So I'm going to ask us to move on to question 2. Unless there's anything else you all want to add to question 1.
Yeah, the only other thing I can think of is, since you're a senior citizen, and I've seen a lot of these lately, is funerals. I don't know if you've got a lot of trips to funeral homes. We now have a Schedingers up here. Rutherford, I think, is technically in Powell, so I don't know if people can go there or not, but that's something else that's sort of important, I would think.
Yeah, I'll look and see if that is a destination. That's a good point.
What are the hours of operation, out of curiosity?
I believe it's Monday through Saturday, 10 to 3.
Oh, it's 10 to 3 is the hours of operation this year?
Let me just
10 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon?
I believe so.
Doesn't seem like it's a very full day, especially if you have to get to work at 8 or you have to leave at 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that is for the senior program. For workforce, we operate whenever the CODA bus operates. So as long as you can get a CODA ride, you can get a Dublin Connector ride.
Okay.
Okay, so to me, the other opportunity is to expand the hours for seniors. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's part of JM's budget request.
All right, second question. Is the Public Services Committee supportive of the curbside management program study, and what is the most pressing challenge? John?
No, I'm totally for the this curbside management program study, and I think it's really interesting. I don't know what the pressing challenges are yet, to be honest with you, because I don't use this service. But no, I think this is where we want to go.
Kathy?
I wanted to make a quick comment on the last subject before we leave that, Jan and Ryan. One of the things I think in terms of long-term viability, we should explore, is there an appetite for a minimum fee for something? So if we're going to start to expand in some other areas, I just wanted to put that out there that, $1 or $2, I mean, nothing that would be prohibitive necessarily, but I think if we're thinking about sustainability, back to could we look at, Medicare, Medicaid, if you will, for hospitals? I think we're going to need to start to ask ourselves a little bit about minimal funding. That would be my thing. On the second question here, the curbside management program study, I'm not sure I'm 100% aware of where you are in that study. Are you saying we've done some work? Do we want to continue, or do we want one of these? What is the question here exactly?
Yeah, so we've done some research, and we're prepared to issue an RFP, and that was based on feedback that we heard with parking, but we're also thinking about handicap parking, scooters, bicycles, loading zones, ride share, ride hailing. So it's really a very holistic approach to the public asset of the curbside, and how can we best manage it, and whether that's policy or technology or a mix of the two. So the recommendations will be, here are some things to consider to better manage the curbside as you have all these conflicting uses interested in using the same space.
Okay. I was on a call last week with some of our colleagues in Marysville, and they are just putting sensor technology in all of their downtown parking spaces. So that will go to an app. I mean, I am adamantly opposed to charging for curbside funding. I will say that. I've said that before. I think it's negative to economic development. So I'm not for fee charging. So if the study's about how we're going to charge for it, I'm not for that. But if we can use technology to say, hey, here's a space available, here's what the usage is, and I think that's what Marysville is doing. I think that's an absolutely wonderful thing. And I would fully support that. So if it's exploring what's out there, what the possibilities are, I know charging is a policy question. I totally get that. We'll put that aside. But how do we think about, what are the best practices and what technologies are available? I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
I totally agree with, oh, I'm sorry, someone else wanted to.
Oh, sorry, it was just me. I just wanted to provide a little clarity on we have not done any work on the study yet at all. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's really meant to determine how to balance the friction between the competing uses of the curbside, looking at the handicap parking, looking at on-street parking, looking at ride hail, ride share, micromobility, Uber Eats, valet parking, loading zones. It's meant to create a holistic plan and approach to managing this valuable asset that the city has. And it's looking at it in a different way than we have up to this point. It does not contemplate any sort of paid parking. It's meant to gather data. It's meant to help us understand how the curbside is being used, what the competing uses are, and then how to manage it effectively. That's the goal of the study.
Sounds great.
Perfect.
I agree. I think that's 100% needed, as well as I think when it comes to the Planning Commission, these are the kinds of things we've talked about, because it will create policy throughout the city, because the curbside is being used much different than it was even 10 years ago. And I see it in Bridge Park. I have handicap, my husband's handicapped. You can't find a space. And people aren't using it the way they should. So I absolutely think that. And I think the challenge probably is that we're very well built out, and we it's going to be hard to be able to get all those uses at the curbside that you want. So it's going to be interesting how you manage that little program.
It's going to be that balance. We're going to have to try to strike that very fine line in that balance. And then we're going to try some things. And then we're probably going to have to modify after we try some things and determine what's working and what's not working. That's how I envision it going.
Yeah, sounds like
Yeah, it's going to be an iterative process, I would imagine.
okay.
There's
All right.
probably going to be some replay of when we got into this huge discussion on Bridge Street about how whether we're going to have meters and how many of them are going to be handicap parking, and round and round we went. So this is going to be interesting. I want to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, the one thing that we're not going to contemplate is any sort of paid parking or an app or an app maybe for the technology and the available spaces, but not in terms of an app for paid parking in any way. We understood that very clearly from our last discussion about that topic.
Cool.
Yeah.
The next question, I want to make sure we get JM his questions answered. The next phase of mobility hub expansion, should staff focus on civic destinations or other points of interest in Dublin, like recreation or entertainment? John, Kathy, you want to go first? Who?
So remind me, we have the 3 destinations and you're looking for what to do after that? Is that?
Exactly. So we could provide more connectivity to municipal buildings or government buildings, or we can look at maybe more recreational or entertainment focused mobility hubs. So we were just curious what the committee would prefer. Or mix.
I noticed that we had the Metro Park South listed, but the Metro Park North is so much more interesting with all the new play equipment. And we worked building an adult exercise course up there, and then they built all that children's stuff up there. And I just, in the future, if we're going to expand to this, I really like the northern hub a lot better than the southern hub. It's just a much more interesting place, and it's really full of families on the weekends. I mean, you can hardly get a parking spot in there. So just an observation on that particular destination.
Is that Glacier? Is that what you're talking about, John?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. It's an incredibly happening place on the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, and we put $6 or $8 million into buying that land to make that happen, to get Glacier, to get the Metro Parks to build us a park. So in every way, it's really our park. And then we battled with them to build improved amenities there, and so it's really our park. The head of it actually lives here in Dublin, so we had a whole series of private meetings with him trying to get that thing upgraded to make it more exciting as a destination. And they did do a lot of nice stuff up there.
I do worry about having the 2 hubs. I understand why you want it, the library and the Bridge Park, but they seem so close together when we're trying to move people across the city. I don't know, can you throw up your one slide that has all the options on it again?
I was going right there. Bear with me.
Yeah. Is that a done deal, the first 3 hubs that you've decided on phase 1?
I would say the most work we've done would be around the rec center, because we submitted an application to AARP and we've started to look at the design.
Yeah.
We discussed it a lot last time. So I know that there was back and forth between the Franz Road and Metro Place North location. But from the conversation last time, it seemed like we were going to go with these 3 at the time and then focus on the next ones.
Yeah.
So Jane, if you're thinking about making sure we have vitality for the historic district as well as the other, I think they're both important, because I think people will, if they hub on the historic side, they'll spend some time there. I think strategically they're there for a good reason. I think.
Right. I personally would like to see Franz Road and Metro Place North, because I do know that the times that I've talked to folks over there that work there, they always say we only have a small amount of time to grab lunch, but we would love to go, down into the historic district or Bridge Park and grab it. But sometimes it's hard. So a mobility hub would give them that easy access to hop a bike, get over there, have some lunch. And I think it would do a lot to make Metro Place more attractive. And that's an economic development lift that we need there to start jumpstarting, getting those places filled up in a more urban friendly environment. So that would be my first choice. I certainly like the others, but the next phase to me would be Franz Road and Metro.
Is there a possibility to have phase one containing 4 sites and one of them would be the Franz Road Metro place, or are we definitely limited to 3 sites?
We're not limited. We can certainly make adjustments if that's what the committee would like to see.
I would like, I agree with Jane and Kathy. I'm sure she feels this way too, because we are trying to infuse a new economic life in that metro place.
Yeah.
So it's really been important. It's been on our list for years, trying to reestablish, and that's really a tax issue, really trying to get more revenue for the city. So it's really important to us.
TIF money could be used to help build that, couldn't it, JM? I mean, we've got TIF money in that metro area. I'm just wondering if that could be funding for you, or I'm not sure.
I am not sure. I cannot speak to that.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I think that's a good place, and I would imagine Colleen and the economic development team would love to see a mobility hub over there.
It is worth noting that we are including CIP requests in the upcoming CIP to help fund these pilots or these locations. So that's something to keep on your radar as we get closer to that review process.
Where is the park and ride?
The park and ride is the blue shaded
Yeah.
marker right there.
Yeah. Friends Road before.
And is the goal of this to say which ones do we want the consultant to help design? Is that what you're after this evening?
It's partly that, yes. And we're looking at mobility hubs from each different tier. If you remember, there's 3 tiers. So we have a downtown hub, we have a neighborhood hub, and we have kind of a campus civic center hub.
Okay.
So that was part of the logic as well.
Right. And I would just reiterate what you mentioned on placemaking. I honestly think we all know what a tired bus stop looks like, right?
Yeah.
I honestly think we have great opportunity here to be a bit creative and artistic. These hubs can be inviting, they can be attractive, they can be a wayfinding element of its own, and they can speak to a progressiveness of a community. They can enhance what's being held there in the inventory and make it look more delightful and more inviting to use. Please, please, please don't create a rectangular, typical bus stop of any kind. Or I'm
We would never.
So, and Joanne, just so you know, this will be coming up. We also prepared worksheets for the upcoming CIP. So you will see these elements coming up in our CIP discussions this fall. So they will be topics of conversation, I'm sure, because you will now start to see a lot of more mobility type related, specific related requests in the CIP than you've ever seen before.
Great.
So it'll be a big change for this year.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what this will really lift this community quite a bit.
Technology enabled, smart.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Solar roofs, sustainability.
Those are the kinds of things that we have contemplated in our CIP request, for
Right.
sure.
And informational as well. These are, we were talking about putting kiosks here and there for, when I think of communication, think about how every department could find a little niche within that mobility hub that speaks to the community. So if we have something we want to share, that's a great place to do it. I mean, if we're talking about an event or how to get to a certain place, or today's happening place is in that direction, hop on the bike and go that way. I mean, it can be very inclusive and help us do an awful lot of things.
So those were some of the things that we talked about during our project development process, and how we wanted to structure them, what we were looking for, and of course it impacts the cost. So we had a lot of those kinds of conversations leading up to the development of the data sheet for inclusion in the CIP. So
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
we agree.
Well, JM, did we answer your questions adequately, or do you have more? If you want us to respond by email to you, we're happy to do that.
If anything else comes up, feel free to email me, but I think this has been great. So thank you so much for your time and feedback.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always fun to hear it.
Okay, bye.
And thank you, Ryan, for all of your work. We appreciate
Yes,
it.
Ryan. Thanks.
Absolutely. I just real quick, I really appreciate the support of Dublin to get us through the last year. We are thriving now, and we've gotten through a very tough year. I really appreciate everybody's support of the program, and we're going to continue to deliver for the community. So thanks for allowing me to be here today.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you for all you've done and helping, and you've been able to adapt to all of this. All right.
Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is the Post Road interchange aesthetic, and I think Jeannie, are you
I'm
presenting?
it. Yep.
All
So
right.
you guys are stuck with me tonight. Sorry, guys. Hopefully,
No, it'll be good.
all right. So I'm going to share my screen. So give me just a minute. Here we go. And let me get it into, there we go. So tonight we are going to talk about the interchange, the 33-161 Post Road interchange aesthetics. Thinking about the presentation tonight, just to give you a little bit of an overview, just to know, so you know what to expect. It's very much similar to the memo that we sent forward to you over the weekend. We're going to begin with a project overview, a brief overview on the bridge aesthetics, dig into the details a little bit more on the landscape aesthetics, outline the overall project schedule, and then go into our discussion items. So as you are all aware, here is an overview of what the future interchange is going to look like. If you can you see my arrow, my cursor here on the screen? Okay, great. So
Yes.
here are the existing ramps, off ramps from 33 onto 161 Post Road. And you can see that we are relocating the eastbound or northbound, westbound and northbound, or eastbound and southbound off ramps over to Eiderman Road and over to Highland Croy. And then we were removing the left turns here and here by adding these loop ramps to the eastbound and westbound directions of 33, and then adding a slip ramp here from Post Road to westbound 33, and then kind of moving a little bit the slip ramp here to eastbound 33 from 161. We are maintaining the roundabout over here at Eiderman Road, and then we are installing a signal here at Highland Croy and Post Road. We will work on some modifications with the interchange project for the roundabout here to improve intersection operations and safety. Does anybody have any questions on this before I move on? Okay. So we did some bridge aesthetic design with the project partners, and we evaluated several aesthetic options for the project, including the bridges, the landscaping, and the bridges. And while the focus on the aesthetic review tonight is mainly on the landscaping due to the very, very tight timeline that this project has been under, we wanted to provide this brief overview of what the bridge aesthetic is going to be and the thought and the intent behind it so that you understand how it was developed. So the design represents the rural character of Union County connected with the medical and technology fields in Dublin. And it also reflects the traditional Dublin bridge aesthetics through the use of stone, these beautiful wing walls, and the abutment wall with the stone here, and the center bridge supports with the stone. The mix of the traditional and modern elements marry these themes in the surrounding area, including the 33 Smart Mobility Corridor, the 33 Innovation Park, the West Innovation District, agriculture, our neighborhoods, our universities, and the transition between Dublin and Union County. The project partners agreed and worked together to develop this design concept in these figures shown above, and as really the best representation of these themes through design, colors, and textures. A decorative rail right up here is included on the bridge, along with the concrete bands here to highlight the arch of the bridge, and is extended through the wing walls, these ribbon walls, which create tiered planting beds alongside the bridge. The parapet wall cap and the upper abutment walls are white. So here and here and the upper abutment walls are all white to match the concrete arch on the bridge. And the retaining walls will support the planting beds between the levels. So here and here in all 4 quadrants of the interchange, and will be clad in natural stone. Stone accents will also be applied to the base of the center bridge support here and along the base of the abutment walls beneath the bridge deck. The remaining concrete on the center supports between the railing and the highlighted bands will be dark gray. So that's this in here to match the painted steel beams, so it's a steel beam structure. So this here, the center support, and this area between the arch and the railing will all be the same color, which will again accentuate and highlight the beautiful arch on this bridge. The stone arch and the stone elements, and the arch complement other key bridges in Dublin, including the Avery Muirfield Drive and Emerald Parkway bridges over 33. The other piece of information is that this is not a new bridge design. It is an updated bridge design, as we discussed in the report that we sent to the committee. It was built from the initial bridge design in 2006, which had the same beautiful arch. The previous design had some stylized shamrock elements to it that were removed because we have many funding partners. It's not just Dublin building this bridge at this point. And so we wanted to be reflective of all of the communities and inclusive of all of the communities who supported and are contributing to the construction of the interchange. So with that, I will turn it over to Michael Hyatt, who will go over the more detailed elements of the landscaping plan.
Hey, Jeannie, can I
Jeannie.
ask a question before you?
Absolutely.
If you could back up, please, one more. Yeah,
This
so,
one?
yeah, no, we're the one ahead. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So how does the bike path work in here? I'm seeing the red line on the
So it's here.
diagram, but
It's here along the south. It's right here.
I
Do you
can't.
see this dark band right here?
Oh,
That is
okay.
That's meant to represent the shared use path. So you're right. And I forgot to highlight that. So pardon me.
No, so it's going underneath the overpass right there and then goes straight through on the other side. So there's
Yes.
about what kind of setback from the road on that?
I believe it follows our typical 8-foot setback. So our typical tree lawn width.
8-foot setback. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Hey, Jeannie, how do you
Yes.
feel about the maintenance on this? Okay, so we got 2 major steel members that have to be painted, the bridge itself and then the railing above it. I guess question number 1, are we're responsible for the maintenance of this bridge, right? The city of Dublin?
So not all of it. We'll be responsible for the aesthetic elements, but the overall bridge maintenance will remain the responsibility of ODOT.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
And then you mentioned that the fascia on the abutments is really going to be natural stone, so we don't have to worry about lick and stick and salt flying
Correct.
up and eating the
Absolutely.
mock
That's
stone away over time, right? So that's
Correct.
going to be real stone. And
Yep.
then next question is, underneath the bridge itself, one side has the bicycle trail. Is this going to be like, is it going to be paved, poured concrete, 4 to 6 washed river gravel? Have we got to that point where what's going to be under the bridge? Of course, there's not going to be any light down there, so we can't have vegetation. Do we know what that's going to be down underneath the bridge area yet?
You
Have we
mean
thought
right here
about
in the
that?
median?
On both sides, against
So
the
here underneath the,
vertical wall. Yeah, I'm just-
right in front of the abutment,
yeah.
I believe it's concrete.
It's going to be poured concrete. Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be poured
All right.
concrete.
And
And
I'm glad.
there will be some under bridge lighting for illumination of the roadway underneath the bridge during the dark hours of the day. So it won't be, The bridge itself won't be lit, but there will be illumination underneath the bridge deck for the roadway. Very similar to Emerald Parkway over 33 and Avery Muirfield over 33.
And you know, I'm sort of glad you got rid of the stylized shamrocks because I was on that committee. And now with hindsight, I thought, yeah, they should have been bolder and they shouldn't have been so stylized. So now that they've been bumped out of this, fine.
Okay,
If the landscape's real intense and it's beautiful, it's
it's
going to complement
beautiful.
Dublin. When people are coming into the community, they're going to know they're in Dublin. So
Well,
yeah, let's
we
see
were
the next.
very, we
Yeah.
were very particular about the overall bridge design and making sure that it represented the traditional Dublin bridge aesthetic while reflecting the technology and the medical fields, you know, in the area, while giving a nod to our rural partners within Union County through the landscaping and aesthetic package. So it's really the combination of the bridge and the landscaping package working together to recognize and acknowledge all of the funding partners through all of the elements.
Jeannie,
Yeah,
I was just going to ask you, I mean, we have had, you know, we're two agenda items here. We're getting to the other bridge where we're having to decide how to make Dublin stand out. Was there any discussion on any naming of this bridge?
not to the actual naming of the bridge. We talked mostly about the bridge aesthetic and making sure that it was reflective of Dublin primarily, while recognizing our other funding partners. We did have at one point a medallion design that was trying to tie together Dublin and Union County, but no one knew what it was. People thought it looked like a shotgun sight. We couldn't get consensus on what it was. And so we said, you know what? It kind of just needed to go. But that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be opportunities to name the bridge in the future. We just have not contemplated that up to this point.
Well, I mean, Dublin has, you know, I mean, this piece is within Union County, or would those be the two entities that would have the right to have their name on the bridge? Would there be anyone else? Marysville wouldn't, because we're not.
No, but
Marysville.
ODOT would, because it's certainly they're a major funding partner. And so
Right.
perhaps Morpsey, who is another major funding partner. So if we wanted to put a plaque on the bridge to commemorate who was responsible for the development of the the design and the construction, it would probably be those partners.
Right.
To
I was just
reflect
thinking
the
how, and
partnership, the
John, you,
collaboration.
yeah, John, you brought this up many times. When you enter a city, which this is entering the city, many of these bridges have the name of the city you're entering on it. And I don't know whether there's an opportunity, but I mean, it will become the transportation highway, obviously. And it would be nice to be able to know that as you pass under this bridge, you've entered Dublin.
Well, we don't actually enter Dublin underneath this bridge. We're on the south side of it. So
Yeah,
it's our
still a
where our
little
core
far out.
line is a little bit awkward in this particular instance,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I personally think there's some beauty to say, let's put the elements of all of this coming together rather than trying to, in my personal opinion, that put a name of a city on it. Instead, it's sort of where all of it comes together. I think that's a very good thing.
That was what we were really trying to represent, was the marriage of the agriculture, the technology, the medical, Dublin, traditional, the future. And this was our interpretation of all of those themes coming together in one spot. And none of this would be possible without everyone collaborating, cooperating, and being willing to give more than was comfortable in order to make this a reality. So we didn't feel that any one partner deserved any more credit or recognition than any other partner. Everyone's doing the most that they can do.
That's very understandable when you explain it that way. I wouldn't want to, yeah, you wouldn't want to do it any other way. It's a beautiful design. But
Thank
I'll let you go forward now with the landscape.
Okay.
Wait a minute, Jeannie,
Oh,
I'm just
go ahead.
out of curiosity, in percentiles, the funding partners, how much of this cost was each partner?
I would have to go back. I can probably figure that out. I think I have that broken out, but it would take me just a moment to find it. So If you would like to go on, we can come back to that question in a moment or two. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I'm sort of curious because,
I mean, it is going to show that Dublin is contributing a significant amount.
That's what I
But from a
figured.
percentage perspective, but I wouldn't know how much in terms of percentage of available funding. So for example, we are going to show that Dublin is contributing a lot more than Union County. However, Union County, from a percentage of their available funds, it's a significant percentage of their available dollars.
I like the whole unanimity idea of, all of us working together, but then I have to go back to Jane's concept that when you're entering Dublin, it's good to know that you're entering Dublin, even though it's, what you say, it's a skew and all that. But, I look at the brazenness of our competitors and their 6-foot cutout metal signs as you go under, it's just a bridge in Worthington, some of these places in Obetz, and you go, God, I know I'm in Obetz. And, Dublin, we've been very meek and humble about our aesthetics, which we should be extraordinarily proud of. And it's always good to know that, yeah, hey, I passed through Dublin on my way to Minnesota or something because I saw it. It was really pretty. I've actually had urban planners from Europe tell me, come to conventions here, and they go, there's only one city we drove through so far in America that really was correct, and that was Dublin. Now, they knew it because they're professional planners. They could see the
Right.
greenery and our urban planning efforts over the last, thank God, 40 years. But, they actually knew the aesthetic was here. And I know I hate to ballyhoo our own city, but, I don't know, maybe that's done some other way along the road or something. But you know what? We put a lifetime of effort into making sure we
We
had the
have.
coolest looking aesthetics of any community in this Appalachian part of America. And we busted our chops to do that. And we made a lot of enemies, and we had unlimited lawsuits against us personally and the city. And, I'm just really proud of what we did over the last almost half a century to make this place cool. So,
And you should be, because it is beautiful. I would stand that just looking at this bridge, the use of the stone, the quality of the materials selected would tell the entire world that they have entered Dublin, whether we shout it from the rooftops or not, because of the overall quality of the aesthetic throughout Dublin. It is reflective and recognizes our tradition and our heritage and the past 50 years. We should be very proud, and we are. I mean, I know I am as staff. I can't imagine anyone working for Dublin doesn't feel the same way.
And Jeannie, and the other way this sort of works is in marketing. I went through this town, it was fabulous. I want to move my factory there, or I want to move my business there, or I want to live there. Just the idea that they know that, the quality of life here is really extraordinarily cool. And, everybody's,
Right.
the team Dublin has done a great job.
We
So,
better
okay.
move this on. Thank you, John.
Yes.
He always is our best cheerleader, isn't he?
I love it. So, and wait until he gets into the details on the landscaping. We haven't
That's
even
why
gotten to
I want to
sketches
move it,
yet.
because I know he's going to have lots and lots of comments there. So let's let you do that, Jimmy.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to turn it over to Michael now. Maybe.
Jeannie.
Yeah. Hold on for 1 second. I got to get there. It's not quite cooperating. Hold on. One more. There we go. Thanks.
Again, I'm Michael, the city's Parks Department. I'll dive right into the landscape. The proposed overall landscape plan for the interchange creates a low-maintenance, semi-annual mowed grassland aesthetic similar to the Muirfield Drive median just south of the roundabout at Brand Road. Next slide, please.
Sorry. I was starting to look for John's information. I might have to. Is it not being cooperative? There we go. I'm sorry. There we go.
The design provides a diversity of plant materials and creates a balance between trees, evergreens, woody shrubs, various large grasses, and ground covers that provide color variety and balance in landscape textures throughout the season. Not all plants or trees species are represented in the palette boards, but each provides an overview and sense for the type of materials chosen. So the upper left corner is just south of the Jack Nicklaus sculpture, and you can see the mix between the proposed mowed lawn and Scottish lynx no-mow lawn. Some of the other plants in the palette we use around town: Grollo, sumac, Coral Beauty, Cotoneaster, Dwarf Korean lilac, the ever ubiquitous catmint, bull sedge, different types of fountain grasses. There are quite a few Stella diora daylilies, and then limelight hydrangeas. Next slide, please. We have 13 proposed trees in the landscape. 10 of them are deciduous and 3 of them are different species of evergreen. Some of those include London plane, northern red oak, red maple, moraine sweet gum, which is the seedless sweet gum, Norway spruce, and then hybrid elms. And then the other 2 evergreens are white fir and Serbian spruce.
You ready?
Yes. The hardscape elements are also included in the landscape plan with curved bands of cobblestone pavers. These bands will also function as drainage swales for the project within the loop ramps on the northwest and southeast quadrants. Paver color for the drainage swales will be selected to match the stone on the retaining walls when the natural stone arrives on site for installation. And so on the right, there are different types of unilock cobblestone pavers, and the bottom would be a mixture of the 2. And that would be an image in the center of these stone-clad retaining walls with a cast in place or precast concrete cap. So this image highlights the locations of the perennial planting beds and the tree species used, and the placement throughout the landscape plan, as well as the location of the shared use path on the south side of State Route 161. The trees are arranged in a hierarchy of arcs and rows that ties the landscape to the Ohio University campus's very distinct architectural row of trees celebrating the West Innovation District. Next. This detailed image provides additional details regarding the arrangement of the perennial planting beds and the material intended to be planted in these, highlighting the northwest quadrant of the intersection. One thing to note is the Coral Beauty Cotoneaster is planned to be used in the perennial beds and tiered planting beds created by the stone-clad retaining walls. This image features the tiered planting beds around the 4 quadrants of the US 33 bridges over State Route 161 and the use of Coral Beauty Cotoneaster nearest the bridge. And the Coral Beauty is proposed as the most used plant in the landscape, and that's going to be a topic of discussion, whether or not it's an appropriate plant to be used at those 4 corners. Next slide. So the project schedule is to complete the design at the end of this year, and then construction will begin in 22 and finish up in 25.
So to give you just a little more detail on the schedule, we are on track to submit our final plan package to ODOT District 6 this in early October, which then will stay with the district for about a month. Then the district submits the sale package to central office. It goes to central office estimating. They work with the plans, they get to know the plans, they work on the final construction cost estimates, and then we are slated to go to sale in February of next year and an award in early March of next year. So we are on a very accelerated, very tight timeline, which is why we are asking for some of the next steps. So in terms...
Go ahead, Jeannie, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to go over what our discussion items were. Did you want to talk about something else first, John?
No, I think your plant material list is some of the toughest, hardest plants you can get. You can't use too many catmints because they're deer proof and they bloom all season. And I planted like 400 to 800 of them one time out here on Muirfield Drive when we ran it, the homeowners association. They whacked them all down with a weed whacker one time to the ground. The maintenance crew, and I went into apoplectic shock, but it was amazing. That plant grew right back and formed itself up like a little boxwood, and all of them came back. That is the toughest and the best perennial you can put out of the 385 perennials we sell. And that's a really good plant. Low growth sumac's really good. All of them, all the plants are really tough. I mean, those are good plants. The sedges are good because the deers won't eat them. Hakalia grass. It was a really good plant. You got golden sedge in there. I don't know if you could, but those are tough. Coral beauty, cotoneaster, an old plant. Sometimes get weeds up in it, but those are all good plants with pretty good color. So, no, I'd say if I was designing this professionally for you guys, I'd probably pick a palette just about like this. So I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you. So the discussion items for tonight were, does the Public Services Committee support, one, the plant materials in the landscape plan, the selected materials in the hardscape plan, the selected colors chosen for use on the bridges, and then forwarding your responses to the above items to council at their June 28th, 2021 regular council meeting, so that we can finalize the aesthetic package and remain on schedule to submit this overall design to ODOT towards the end of this fall. We have to get through our tracings review. We have quite a bit of work left, but we wanted to make sure that we were all in agreement on how this aesthetic package was going to move forward.
Hey, Mike, I just want one other question. I noticed this is done like in Holland. Of course, they're flat up there along their freeways, and the Autobahns in Germany. If you look at the Tuttle Mall intersection below us to the south, the accenting of I think they had pear trees, that pulls the height up and makes it very dramatic. I don't know if you guys thought about that on the higher points of the design, where they're grouped, and you're coming down the freeway and you see that exit. I try to get, and I had a whole bunch of years with ODOT when I used to be the head of the State Ohio Beautification Commission, but trying to teach ODOT the nuances of what the Dutch were doing, signaling interchanges that were coming up on this freeway system using plant material. It was really very sophisticated, and this goes back already 30, 40 years. But one thing I do admire about the Tuttle Road intersection is the vertical plant material, those pear trees on the top, and it just adds drama as you see that thing zipping up from Broad Street coming up towards Dublin. So I don't know if I like the design and everything, what you guys are considering. I don't know if you had thought about that aspect of the design on the top of the bridge area, where the highest elevation is crossing. So
you mean up in this area, John?
Yeah, left and right coming up the freeway, and and there are trees drawn in here. If you look at this plan view, there's 4 and 4, and it does add drama to the freeway exit, and even coming south from Marysville for 20 miles of straight nothing in farm field to hit something it's aesthetically interesting is going to be really pretty cool. I think you guys worked this out too, so you're keeping our maintenance down, which I sort of appreciate. You still have a lot of flower beds, but I think you're trying to save us some grief here on the expense, and that is much appreciated too. So overall, I like it. I think it's a pretty good plan. The only other comment I would have to say is the one I mentioned, where you add drama by going to the highest elevation and putting in masses of trees up there for dramatic effect. So that's my comments.
Kathy?
Sure.
Well, this is not my area of expertise, so I just listen in awe. I only had sort of 2 questions: is what it looks like in the winter versus the summer, and the amount of evergreen mix versus the deciduous trees. And that's all I know about trees, the difference between the 2 things. That's it. But John, I guess my question to you is it's going to be dramatic in the summer, but what about the rest of the year? Are there thoughts to do that? And as it relates to that, and while you're talking about that, John, there are a lot of homes and stuff as we buffer off this road. How about sound blocking and sound buffers as it relates to potential vegetation? So those are sort of two questions I'll let the experts argue over.
I don't think that, that entered into it, the buffering along the freeway. I would have to say on the color question you raised, it's very interesting because if you look at the plant palette they picked, the catmint starts blooming the first week of the tournament and keeps blooming all summer. And then the daylilies, which are just tougher nails, kick in for the midsummer. And then for midsummer to fall, they have hydrangeas, and those are great. Everybody knows Korean lilacs bloom. They only last about 2 or 3 weeks. The Coral Beauty cotoneaster, that's more of an interesting draping plant. So I think it was mentioned that it's going to be planted over some of the walls. It will drape down. Also, the German one, Herbstführer, in that species is an excellent plant too. You might look at that. I haven't seen that used a lot. And then the Apiculata species is also tougher. Is almost as tough as this one. And that has the one we selected here that they have is it does bloom. The blooms are not that big. They do have red berries on it, which is pretty good. The sumac low grow turns. I planted the entire Mershon Auditorium area with that. That turns bright red. They need the low maintenance, and that turns bright red in the fall. So I think we got an interesting. If you're looking at tough plants, Kathy, I think they pick tough plants that bloom. Will carry the blooming all throughout the year, and then of course they're counting on the spruce trees to carry the rest of the design. So it is. And the shade trees are tough trees too. I mean, they picked really tough trees. I mean, the best
Enough evergreen mix in here, John?
Pardon?
Do you think there's enough evergreen so that for the winter it's sort of over the winter? Again, not my area, just a question.
That's a real. Kathy, that's a good question because you got to say to yourself, there's a whole species of junipers that are just tougher than hell, and they're natives of South China, the hot part, and Greece. And should we have incorporated some evergreen junipers into the design? And I don't know. I mean, it's sort of a subjective understanding of design, and that would be the evergreen plant you probably would have picked. It would have either been the Taxus yews, the boxwoods, or the junipers if you're just going to have them hanging out there on the freeway and be molested by the wind and the cars. But that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I have to go back to the designers that designed this thing and see what they think.
Is that something, could you use still, Jeannie or Michael, evergreen shrubs like junipers at specific or distinct areas that maybe just enhance as you go through the bridge at wintertime? Not necessarily spread them all out, but maybe something that would just give interest in the winter with evergreen shrubberies. I don't know. What do you all think about that? I like John and Kathy's idea. I do think sometimes in the winter is the time you would like to see a little bit of beauty.
Michael, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there are evergreens in the landscape, and then there are 250 evergreen trees that we're planting as well. And then we don't really like to do more than 25% of any species, so it is quite a mix of things. We have gold lace, Pfister junipers scattered, but I certainly think maybe where the cotoneaster are, where you're going to see them as you're going under the tunnel, there may be room to reduce those and add in maybe some sort of ground covered juniper or a low spreading Taxus or something else that gives you winter interest.
That's an interesting suggestion. Yeah, I mean, I'd look at that according to Kathy's wishes. I mean, I don't, but what you've designed is really pretty adequate. But that's a good point. Is how you say you got 250 evergreens, and you picked the two best ones right now to keep Diplodium disease out and the needle drop disease off of us. So And I love white firs and Norway spruces are the two that we don't have to spray and mess with. You did a nice job picking out the plant material. So yeah, if you guys want to look at that, I think, that's an interesting suggestion.
The other thing that I'd like to point out just briefly is that these clusterings of the green, they look like dots or whatever, these are all, I didn't call out every single cluster of trees, but all of these are clusterings of the evergreen material. So the
Where are you,
dots that-
Jeannie? Where are you? Could you point
so
to?
yeah, can you see my arrow?
Yeah, I
on my
see it now.
Okay, so the clusters that are green like this, those are all clusterings of evergreen trees. I just didn't
Okay.
call every single group out because it got too busy on the screen and you couldn't, then it didn't make sense for everything was just competing. So I tried to tone it down to give a representation of what was going on in the landscape plan, but there are more trees than what these leaders suggest. So these clusterings of the dark green are the evergreen trees, and these clusterings of these more open circles are the clusterings of the deciduous trees all throughout the plan.
Yeah,
You
when
know,
you
the-
said
Go ahead.
250, that's a lot more trees than I thought when I was looking at this. So
Yeah, and
maybe that's all taken care of. That was just, if
Yeah.
the designers feel it, that's the question. Is there a sound buffering like over where the residents live? Is there a way, or again, a question to the experts, how does vegetation help with that? Because I know that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, so vegetation does help with noise buffering, but you have to have quite a bit of it. You have to have about 200 feet of it for it to have an impact on the residents. And noise was analyzed in terms of this work. If you might remember the Post Preserve public meeting, Kathy, we talked about it then. And the noise thresholds did not meet the criteria for a noise wall or a noise barrier type of installation. So if we want to do something more, we'll have to look at additional plantings, additional trees along, the edges of the properties. But trees do, and vegetation does absorb sound. So we know that for sure.
Put in a plug then, because there's no way this isn't going to increase the noise level. There's just no way that isn't going to happen for the residents through there, particularly that Gordon property, which is going to be right up against it that has been built. So if there are any ways in this design to add some more to that, Jeannie, relative to noise control, and still be reasonable, I would put a plug in for that. I think the residents would appreciate it. I don't know what I'm asking for when I say that, right?
Yeah, and I think where they would be more effective would be more along their property lines and closer to them versus here within the interchange itself. So it would really be on the west side of Highland Croy, particularly for the Gordon property, where we would want to look at vegetation along the Hawkins property, the Orchansky property going north along Highland Croy. The density that we would need to be effective in the interchange would be counterproductive to the design that's been proposed.
Hey, Jeannie, here's
Yeah.
a suggestion, really. And I've read a billion of these noise things, and you and I and landscape architects do studies on this. But I was just wondering, when they're building the interchange, if they could do this with mounting. We know the studies that show the noise rolling up, up over the trees, going up, or rolling up over the mounds. And I just wondering, during the excavation process, if there's any room to allow mounds, which is a heck of a lot more permanent than the spruce trees, which might last 20 or 30 years and then die. If there's any way during the construction period, if we could put this into mounding and help that be a barrier and not let that interfere with the design. And I mean, because sometimes,
So
and I don't
again,
know what
you would
I
want
don't know
them-
what the cut and fill deal is on this project. I have no idea, obviously. But, you know, I do like mounding. I actually like mounding over tree barriers because they don't have to be replaced. And then you just decorate a
Right.
few trees on the top, some crab apples or whatnot. Something else
So
I noticed.
again,
Go ahead.
the mounding would be most effective along the Hawkins property and the Rachansky property along 33 directly versus here within the interchange itself. And so those
Right.
are on properties that we don't own. They're on private property. We would have to work with the developers when those parcels came in for, and they would go to Union County. They won't come into Dublin, obviously, but we would work with our partners in Union County to advocate for that sort of treatment along 33. But that's where we'll get the most bang for our buck, not here within the interchange
No,
itself.
I wouldn't suggest it within the interchange. I was really
Okay.
suggesting it along the, you know, along the, I don't know how much right of way setback we have and, you know, whether we could actually work the mounds in that Kathy's talking about, you know, along the side of the freeway. Just something else I just want to tell the designers, and I think this is really pretty clever. Nothing's better than a sense of entryway. And if you look at how the plants are laid in these arcs, and you sort of pull through these senses of entryway, they're defined walls on either side. That's pretty dramatic stuff, really. And they've done it in a number of different spots on this design, which is really pretty cool. So when you're coming around the curve and you're going through some red oaks, a lineal thing of red oaks, or as they shown here, red maples, that's pretty dramatic. So it's going to be a pretty neat design when this thing comes together.
It's going
I
to be,
think.
yeah, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really going to be, it's going to be a powerful statement coming into this corridor for sure.
Yeah.
John, the other thing I wanted to offer just really quick is I did find those percentages. Tina managed to find them for me really quick. So Dublin will have a 14.7% contribution to the construction of the project. Union County will have a 10.5% contribution. The developers in both Union County and Dublin will have an 8.3% contribution. ODOT District 6 has some rehabilitation funds in there. So at 2.6%, Morpsey has a contribution of 30.1%, and then TRAC, which is the ODOT major new funding, has a contribution of 33.8%.
Jeannie, you made us all feel so much better because everybody wants to stick the tab on Dublin. It's like taking your kids out for dinner and they all have great jobs, but you end up picking up the bill at the dinner table anyway. So
Yeah, we
God
have a
bless
great
you.
percentage.
I figured we were at
really hard on
65.
this funding package.
Yeah, I figured we were at 65 or 75% of this deal. No, that makes us
No.
all feel much warmer and happier. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm so glad that we were able to find those numbers and provide them for you then.
Yeah,
good.
no, that's great. Thank you.
We
Kathy-
worked very, very hard on this funding package so that
Oh,
Dublin was
good.
not the one left holding the bill.
Yeah, beautiful.
I feel comfortable if everybody else does. I think the design seems to be passing the mustard here. And I like the idea of what John was saying about the elevated trees, and I'm assuming that's in this landscape. I would say to Kathy, because you brought that concern up about buffering, that is before the Planning and Zoning Committee, the Gordon property.
Mhm.
And so we have a 150-foot buffer along Highland Croy, but I will keep that in my back pocket and remember that we need to be absolutely sure that the materials, and I'm sure they'll help us, you know, when the application goes to staff, to be sure that the materials in the landscape will be such that it will help with the noise buffering. So I'll keep that.
And think about the windows too, Jane, in those homes
Yeah.
as they come forward, because if the windows are a little more insulating, it will also help their atmosphere inside the home.
Oh, thank you, Jeannie. That's good. That's a good tip right there. Yeah, we'll make sure of that it's good quality window.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's fabulous. I'm coming over for more tips because we need that. They will be complaining about noise. So,
Because that's going to be so important to
It
that
is.
the community, and whatever we can do, I think they will be so appreciative. So thank you.
sounds good.
Great.
All right.
So
well,
one more final question. Are you comfortable with us forwarding this plan to City Council for the June 28th meeting with the comments and a recommendation for approval then for the landscaping, the overall aesthetic package. That's what I'm trying to spit out.
All right. Group,
Yes.
is that a yes? John?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they've done a good job. Yeah.
Okay. There
Yep.
you are.
All right,
Jeannie,
wonderful. Thank you
You're
so
going to
much.
Hollywood.
Hey, Jeannie,
Yay. Thank you for a wonderful conversation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeannie. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Jeannie,
Yes.
can I ask a question? So after council and it moves to be approved, I think it'd be very wonderful to be able to provide the update and maybe even with a little more diagramming of where the trees are and whatever to share with the residents, because I do think it's, as we start to move forward, it has been slightly updated from the version that they saw in 2007. So over
It's
the
consistent with what we showed them in at the post-preserve public meeting, but it is more detailed and we have more information on the plant material selected and the plant palette. And I would be happy to provide that to the residents.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah, I would suggest at the June 28th meeting, Jeannie, I think because it is such an impressive landscape design, but it's one dimensional and you're looking at it from above. If you could have one elevation image of entering Dublin and showing what that would look like with the plant materials there. I don't know how easy you can do it on your CAD or whatever. I don't know if the landscape, I don't know
that we will have that for the June 28th meeting, but I could probably have it for a subsequent meeting if that would be acceptable, if we could follow up, if I could still provide the information for the June 28th meeting, I would deeply appreciate that. And then we could follow up with an elevation view at a later date, because I don't think that exists right now.
That's fine. I think that's
Okay.
fine, but I think it would create some excitement and make people feel comfortable that they're not just getting a big road, that they're actually getting a beautiful landscape element. So I think it would just make everybody feel better.
I will be happy to do that and
All
provide it. Thank you.
All right, we are on to the next one, which is the next agenda item, the bridge parapet. Hopefully this will be the last time we talk about the bridge parapet. All right, Matt?
Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so in the spirit of brevity, I know we've gone through multiple iterations of this topic, and in that spirit, I've created the shortest slide deck in the history of committee meetings. But as we met on this topic on May 3rd, the color options that we used for some of the existing photos of the bridge and so forth, I don't think it did it justice to give you a fair shake at understanding what this color scheme might look like. But in light of all of that, we did take all of your comments back to the artist. We did ask for additional suggestions. And in doing so, thanks to Michael Hyatt, he went out and took some very high resolution camera shots of the trusses to make sure that we were representing the actual colors on site. So in your packet this evening is basically what the artist preference is based on the actual color of the truss itself. So you can see in what the artist recommended, there's a slight variation in the shade to complement the actual color. That's taking into consideration some of the shadowing effect that occurs on bridges just based on the three-dimensional form. So looking at what we've rendered here, I feel as though this has captured what or the committee has asked for at the last meeting, which is our recommendation to move forward with this as a recommendation to City Council. And as we mentioned before, the cost of doing this stain work would be estimated somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000. So I'll leave it open for your discussion, and hopefully we can come to a solution.
I think it's great, by the way. I mean, really, $25,000 isn't spit, because if I drive through Dublin and I decide I'm going to move my business here, you're going to get your $25,000 back the first year of taxes on my people. So, no, I love it. The knot is beautiful, and to highlight that knot with that green color is awesome, and to put the name Dublin over there, even very modestly done compared to our competing cities, I just think it's great. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
Kathy?
Let's go, Matt.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah. You're good, Kath? You're good with this? All right. I really appreciate the fact that the color, the quality of the picture and the color gives us comfort to know that we didn't have two different color tones, which I would have had a really hard time driving under. But I'm a yes on this, so I think we're 3 yeses. Go paint that
Okay.
thing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And
All right.
How soon, hey, Matt, how soon can they paint that thing, really?
well, I guess we need to take this to city council to get a final vote, and we can probably have that ready for the upcoming council meeting, or we can wait till the July 26th meeting at your preference.
I'd say as soon as possible. I always wanted to know where I lived, and now when I see that bridge every night going under it, I'll know where my home is at. It's
right. It's perfect. All
We'll
right,
make
I'd say soon too, the next meeting.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for all this. Appreciate it, Matt. I know it's a lot of headache and work, but
Just get
I
it
think
right
we'll
the first time, right?
yeah, we got to get it right the first time. All right. I always hate repainting anything. Okay. We are at the last agenda and we are welcoming Tracy Gee, Recreation Services, I think.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
I'm going to share my screen here. Everybody good with that?
Yes, we can see
Okay,
it.
great. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you about the great work that our team does for our residents and give you an update about what's going on with Rec Services. I think most of you know this, but just as a brief overview, the current Division of Recreation Services includes 22 full-time staff and between 100 and 300 part-time staff depending upon the season. Each recreation administrator under me heads a sector of our operations. That includes programming, aquatics and metrics, facility reservation and patron experience, and corporate and community wellness. The programming group handles all of our age group programming from preschool all the way up to senior adult programs. The aquatics and metrics group handles the operation of all 3 indoor and outdoor pool venues and all related programming, as well as our new effort to tell our story with metrics and infographics. The facility reservation and patron experience group handles all indoor DCRC reservations and leads all of our customer service functions, including memberships and program registration. The corporate and community wellness group leads all of our DCRC fitness operations, as well as our FitBiz and corporate wellness offerings. As is the case around the world in the past 18 months, the Recreation Services has been a master class in dealing with ambiguity and demonstrating resilience. I couldn't be more proud of how our team emerged from this crucible to create new and innovative ways for the public to connect with recreation throughout the pandemic. Our staff have been hard at work and interacting with the public for the duration of the pandemic. Every work group modified operating plans every time guidance changes came out from the governor, Ohio Department of Health, or Franklin County Public Health. We have an archive of over 42 different operating plans for all of our lines of business. New lines of business were created to continue to connect residents to recreation while they were at home. The fitness staff developed an entirely new virtual platform on which to conduct virtual fitness classes. If you think Zoom meetings can be a technical challenge, try adding in music licensing complications to the mix. Our theater staff developed an entirely new virtual theater project that garnered national attention as an example of how theater could continue during a pandemic. None of these things existed prior to the pandemic for us, and they were created in a matter of weeks or months. Preschool youth staff created Camp in a Box take-home kits that parents picked up drive-through style outside the DCRC. And our senior staff and outreach engagement partnered to provide drive-through box lunches for seniors and drive-in bingo that seniors participated in from the safety of their cars, honking for bingo wins. Many of our popular offerings are continuing even as we exit the pandemic. Despite all the creative pandemic outreach, the DCRC was impacted by public health orders and pandemic capacity restrictions and safety protocols. As you can see from the past visits line in green, the restrictions limited the number of past visits we had in 2020. We prioritized access for members by eliminating daily pass sales for several months in 2020. So the total daily passes for 2020 was also greatly reduced. Memberships were also impacted by the pandemic closures and restrictions. This chart shows our annual pass holder totals for the last 6 years. As you can see, over time, we're usually between 7,500 and 8,700 passes. Although we continued to engage the public in 2020, capacity restrictions and contact tracing requirements made it more challenging to visit, and our largest demographic group, our seniors, tended to prefer to stay at home, allowing memberships to lapse. As you can see, since June 2020, there has been a substantial but understandable reduction in membership numbers. The good news is that we've seen a turn towards a positive around the beginning of June when the health orders lifted. This gives us a sign that membership numbers are beginning to recover. How quickly they recover is still unknown at this time. As you can see from this chart, annual passes noted in blue here are a significant source of our revenue. The recovery of annual pass revenue will be slower than other types of revenue due to some of the challenges that I'll discuss in an upcoming slide. As you know, in a normal year, we're required to recover 50% of our direct costs in aggregate. As has been discussed many times, we did not meet that cost recovery goal in 2020 for obvious reasons. The cost recovery for the current year and future years is still being evaluated. Any lack in membership recovery will delay the return to the compliance with that policy. This chart shows our cost recovery by month for recreation and outdoor pool funds. In recreation services, our revenue and cost recovery peak with our large revenue producing programs like summer camps and outdoor pool operations. This accounts for the rise you see in this chart in April and May. In the first quarter, cost recovery in 2021 lagged behind 2020, but the expectation is that 2021 will outperform 2020 the remainder of the year. Cost recovery is not expected to exceed 50% in 2021, but will improve significantly from 2020 levels. This chart shows the recreation fund monthly revenue. The pandemic impact can be seen in the dark blue bars for May and June 2020. The good news is that when you look at April and May 2021, shown in green, we are starting to track closer to normal as the restrictions start to lift. The 2021 revenue estimate is about $2 million. The estimated recreation cost recovery for 2021 is about 30%. Year-to-date revenue through May is about $1 million, so that is a positive sign. We anticipated this impact to membership and launched several membership promotions to bring people back to the DCRC. These included free promotional items and value ads, along with videos demonstrating our safe operating practices so residents can feel confident coming back. You probably saw these promotions in our social media feeds or via our Direct Connect member emails coming from the Rec Center. We're planning additional incentives around Black Friday and holidays to encourage membership renewal. Hopefully, as the weather turns colder towards the fall and kids go back to school, residents will return to us to renew their memberships. Attendance numbers show residents are gradually starting to come back. As you can see from this dotted trend line, attendance was on the rise even before the health orders lifted. The blue arrow indicates the date on which we resumed normal operations, free of COVID capacity restrictions. The holiday weekend explains the dip shortly after, but the trend line is moving upward. We have attendance fluctuations from day to day in a normal year, and summer is usually a quieter time for indoor fitness and aquatic spaces in the DCRC. There's very good news at the outdoor pools. The lifting of pandemic restrictions for these venues allowed a return to normal. As you can see from this chart, we are very close to reaching 2019 pass sales numbers for this year. In our last normal operating year, 2019, pool pass sales revenue was $305,569, and as of yesterday, 2021 pool pass revenue was $310,062. So that's very encouraging. Patron attendance is also very good at the outdoor pools. A brand new pool facility might have something to do with that. The start dates of the 2020 and 2021 pool seasons do not align exactly, so let me explain the chart. The blue line indicates the daily 2020 South Pool attendance. You'll recall that last summer, the North Pool was still under renovation and the South Pool was under significant COVID capacity restrictions. It's interesting to note that even with the restrictions, residents did not use the South Pool to capacity last summer. Of the 22,000 available sign-up slots, only 8,200 were used for the summer. The green line above indicates the average daily attendance we have had for the first 2 weeks of this year's pool season. This number includes attendance at both North and South pools. 72% of those attendees went to the new North Pool and 28% went to the South Pool. So we're looking forward to some normal attendance numbers if we have a hot summer. As we continue to recover, we're faced with some very real challenges. Residents have formed new habits. Some have found joy and convenience in working out from home while they continue to work remotely. Some have found joy in finding new parks and paths to explore. Some residents just haven't been back in the building to renew their membership. Some residents are still hesitant to return, and if you read about recovery from past pandemics, it's a common theme. There is a slow and gradual return to activities and places where people gathered. Staffing is also on our radar. While we're not experiencing the staffing shortages that some of our peer municipalities are experiencing, we are noticing substantial reductions in our applicant pool, which may become a factor as programs like summer camps return to capacity in 2022. Knowing that resident engagement is the key to our recovery, what are our goals moving forward? We want to return to normal operations as quickly as possible while following all public health recommendations. We'd like to employ aggressive staff recruitment and retention strategies to remain an employer of choice in this new market. We'd like to retain successful virtual and outdoor program offerings so everyone has a comfortable place to participate regardless of their COVID comfort. And we'd like to meet our 50% cost recovery goal as quickly as possible and begin to fund the new recreation maintenance fund that was established in 2019. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
We have any questions? Tracy, that was very informative. It's interesting to see how people have adapted, yet you still had quite a bit of activity.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people come back from and what they're comfortable participating in.
Right. Kathy or John?
I think that was a great presentation. Thank you very much. So you mentioned, I can't imagine the stress everybody was under to put together new programs, but you guys did an amazing job. And so thank you for that. Which of those new programs and the virtual ones do you guys think you're going to keep or maybe expand on, or maybe just a few comments about, never waste a good opportunity, right, to innovate here. And then I had a second question later, but your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you heard a little bit about it from Joe last night at the council meeting. Obviously, the virtual theater project and the programming that he's doing is going to continue. The seniors really enjoyed the drive-through bingo and the outdoor activities, so we may try doing more outdoor activities for seniors. And I think some of the virtual fitness opportunities are going and some are not. So we'll do what we normally do and evaluate each program by program and then continue the ones that there seems to be interest in and grow those.
And sort of my second question is that I think about making it easy for people to decide at the last minute or to use a service or to discover what's there. We've been talking a little bit about how to, flex the Go Dublin app to really make it a tool that you can discover and maybe buy a membership or sign up for a class or whatever. Have you guys talked a bit about how maybe the Go app could help in this, or not quite yet?
We have had lots of discussions about some kind of a mobile utility in that way. We have a new RecTrack upgrade that gives us some capabilities we didn't have before. So we have had those discussions, not specifically related to the Go Dublin app, but I think our heads are going in that direction, and we want to make things as easy as possible to try to get folks to come back.
Hey, if Go Dublin motto worked for anybody, it's for you guys, right? Go Dublin. So I think the more we can put it together, so there's really sort of a one-stop shop and it really becomes very customer user focused, I think that would be invaluable. So thank you thank you to the team for an amazingly challenging but still very productive year.
Tracy, do we still have the program we worked out for college kids coming home for the summer? We gave them a reduced rate, and because they're going to be around here for 3 or 4 months. Do we still have that?
Yep, we still have our college pass. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that was a great thing. That was a good innovation, I thought. Again, it was a great report, and it filled in any questions I might have. And I'm very proud of the rec center, since we were the first guys to put one together for their community. It showed we cared about their health a notch up than everybody else for our citizens. And we're doing a great job, I think, trying to keep our people healthy. And you guys are the force behind that movement. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to the team.
Yeah. Tracy, I have a couple of questions. One, during the time of the pandemic, when you were doing so many virtual things, was there a particular demographic, a particular age group that used the rec center's offerings?
You know, I don't know that answer right off the top of my head. I think the folks that attended regular classes followed their instructor. So I think that I would, venture a guess that since our largest membership demographic group is seniors, that likely followed in the program utilization.
Okay. And the other question I had was concerning, well, I agree with Kathy. I think if we've been putting our heads together about this 2035 and in a one-stop shop. Everybody does everything on their phone. So if there's a way, and especially for seniors in a simple way, they can do it without having to go to a computer, that would be wonderful. Any thoughts on, we just had this conversation earlier about transportation. You have so many people coming and going in so many different ways. You have children, you have seniors, you have whatever. Do you have any suggestions on how the rec center's transportation needs could be met better than maybe what we've already been thinking about?
That's a good question. We've been involved in the discussions with JM as he was talking about the mobility hub at the rec center. I think that his plan is good. It'll be a good experiment to have it in the rec center because we see people coming and going in so many different modes of transportation that giving them flexibility to do that more frequently is going to be a good thing. So we're kind of on board with JM's plan.
Okay. And then my last question is this: because you serve so many seniors and our population is so largely senior, what are your wishes? What can we do to improve not necessarily the offerings, but to reach them? What do you see their needs are in general? Because there's so many now. We have so many people are at home that are caregivers that can't get to the rec center and use the facilities, but are just as lonely as can be, and many lonely people that don't come out. So how can we help them?
And I think our senior program supervisors in close contact with our membership group, this Dublin Community Senior Citizens Group as well, trying to find out what those identified needs are and trying to connect with services to fulfill those. We've had lots of discussions with the Aging in Place initiative about, how do we need to change and modify the senior lounge and the recreation center to accommodate the wide range of interests. We've got seniors who are still working, seniors who are newly retired, and then, the age range goes up from there. So that's a really diverse group of needs to work with. So we've done some research to kind of understand and survey that group and put together a plan. I think down the road, we're looking at some kind of renovation for the senior lounge to make it more flexible for those different user groups. And then obviously we're going to continue working with Wanda and her group to continue outreach and partnership through the Aging in Place partners.
Right. I watched the Dublin Arts Council move from being more locally focus to outreaching into the community especially during the pandemic and the wellness, and what a beautiful benefit that was. And the reason I ask this is because I had a conversation today. People who are caregivers or they're at home, they cannot come in. They just can't. And they have no one that comes out. And I'm really encouraging us to be creative and finding ways to reach outward to the seniors, because I know that they're struggling in many ways with loneliness and frustration and not being able to leave their homes. And how can we help them?
And I think as we exit this pandemic, we're going to be creating new things again. We thought when we opened the senior lounge, we'd have a resurgence of activity, and we're just not seeing that. So I think we're going to have to find new ways to reach people where they are. I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's great. All right, well, we really appreciate the presentation, and it's good to hear that things are starting to look up again and people are starting to come back, and we'll get there. We will. Any other questions from the group?
No.
Anything else you need from us, Tracy?
No, ma'am. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Well, I think that we've covered the entire agenda. I'm looking to be sure. Anything else you all want to bring up? Are we good?
We're good.
7:17. All right, 10 minutes early. All right. All right. Thanks for
Have
all
a
your
good evening.
input.
Yep.
Take care.
All right.
Bye, thank you.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
all.
Jean. Thanks, team.